Happy birthday to one of the greatest players ever to play in the Premier League and one of the greatest Arsenal players in history. Thierry Henry, 43 today. Happy birthday. Hello and welcome back to my channel over and over and over again, which features everything to do with Arsenal. So in this video I just really wanted to pay a tribute to a player who is still rightly regarded as one of the greatest players ever to play in the Premier League, and certainly one of the greatest players ever to play for Arsenal by a country mile. Of course today is his 43rd birthday, and that player of course is the one and only Thierry Henry. So Thierry was born on the 17th of August 1977. Now he started his career at Monaco, where the manager at that time was a certain Arsene Wenger, who of course would have a big influence on his career. He was at Monaco for quite a number of years. He was there from 1994 to 1999. He won one league title with them, and he scored 28 goals it was in 141 games, playing mainly on the wing. He was looked upon as a winger because of his pace, and he did score goals, but he wasn't a prolific goal scorer at that particular time. But he did of course win the World Cup with France in 1998. He was actually their top scorer in that competition as well, of course played in France as well, so he'd won the World Cup already. In 1999 he moved briefly to Juventus in Italy, but like many players over the years he struggled to adapt to the Italian game, and in his season there he played just 19 times and scored 3 goals. So it was in the summer of 1999 that he arrived at Arsenal. Arsene Wenger signed him, obviously remembering him from his days at Monaco. Brought him to Arsenal as a replacement for Nicolas Anelka, if you remember, who moved to Real Madrid that summer, didn't he? So now at first Thierry Henry struggled to score goals. Arsene Wenger was trying to convert him from playing on the wing to more of a central striker. And while his pace was just incredible, he was getting into some great positions. He was struggling to finish the chances off. He scored his first goal, if you remember, at Southampton. It was in September 1999 down at the Old Dell. Tony Adams actually gave him the assist, and it was a good goal, wasn't it? A shot sort of on a turn from the edge of the box, which won us that game. But up until the end of November, he was struggling for goals. I think he'd only scored 3 in what was almost the first half of the season. And there were question marks actually being asked about him, whether or not he was going to be able to score enough goals in the Premier League. But the game that I remember it all turning for him was against Derby County at Highbury. I think it was the last weekend in November 1999, and Thierry Henry scored both goals that day as we won 2-1. And that seemed to set off ignited it inside him to believe that he could play in that role and he could score goals. The 2 goals he got in that game turned out to be typical goals that he would score for us over the years, coming in from the left hand side, his pace getting him into a good position and him kind of clipping it across the keeper. And so they were goals he became really famous for. But that was the game for me that really kick-started his Arsenal career. And at the end of that season, he went on a great run after that. He finished his first season with 26 goals in all competitions, which was, really good, a really good total. And by this stage, we were realising that, we actually had somebody quite special on our hands. We did reach the final of the UEFA Cup that season. Thierry Henry actually scored in the semi-final against Lyon, but unfortunately, we drew 0-0 in the final with Galatasaray and ended up losing on penalties. The following season was again a bit of a disappointing season. Thierry Henry's goals dropped. He only got 22 that season. We finished runners-up in the league, but miles behind Manchester United. And of course, that was a season where we played in the first FA Cup final at the Millennium Stadium against Liverpool, and of course lost 2-1. Thierry Henry, if you remember, had an effort at goal early on in that game, which was handballed on the line. I think it was Stefan Honcho, wasn't it, with a handball on the line to prevent him scoring. It wasn't given as a penalty. It was given as a goal kick. I think it might have been even. And of course, we went on to lose that game 2-1. Thierry Henry did miss a few other chances in that game as well. So that was a disappointing season, but the team was being built. Arsene Wenger was building a team around Thierry Henry, and that would really come into fruition the following 2001-2002 season, where of course we won Arsene Wenger's second double, the third for the club. And of course Thierry Henry that season really came into his own. He ended the season with 32 goals in all competitions. As we won the league that year. If you remember, that was the year when we won it at Old Trafford. Thierry Henry actually didn't play in that game when we won 1-0. It was Sylvain Wiltord who scored that goal. We also beat Chelsea in the FA Cup final, of course, didn't we, 2-0. Thierry Henry didn't score in that game either. And that's something that maybe slightly hung over him a little bit in his Arsenal career, you know, getting goals in the really big games. But, you know, when you're scoring 32 goals a season and winning doubles, no one really cares. And by this point, really, he was, I think that was the first season he won the PFA Player of the Year. Now, the following season was a little bit of a disappointment for us. We should have retained the league. We should have retained the double, actually, because we did win the FA Cup again, beating Southampton in the final. But we blew the league title, didn't we, at the end? But again, Henry scored 32 goals in all competitions, and by now he was, you know, rightly regarded as the most complete player in the Premier League. He would have got even more credit, of course, if he hadn't played for Arsenal and played for somebody else. But it was plain for all to see just how good he was. Some of the things that he did on the pitch was just incredible. And of course, it all came together, not only for Henry, but for the team as a whole in the 2003-2004 season, of course, the invincible season. What a magnificent season that was for the club, but also individually for Thierry Henry. He was unplayable for large chunks of that season. He ended up scoring 39 goals, 30 in the Premier League. Incredible. I think that's the third highest ever total, second or third highest ever total in the club's history for one season. And he was absolutely magnificent. Brilliant season he had. If you remember that game, of course, against Liverpool at Highbury, where we'd just been knocked out of the FA Cup the week before. We'd lost in the Champions League in midweek to Chelsea. Everybody was on a bit of a downer. We were losing at half-time to Liverpool. The unbeaten run in the league looked like it was going to end as well. It was going to be a terrible week. But, you know, Thierry Henry, what great players do is, at moments like that, they step up. He stepped up, scored 2 goals in the second half to complete his hat-trick, and we turned the game around to win 4-2. And I think at that point we all knew that we were probably going to do the unbeaten season, which of course we did. And of course Thierry Henry scored in that final game a penalty against Leicester, when we were losing in that game, and he scored the penalty to make it 1-1, before of course Patrick Vieira got the winning goal. So that was probably the greatest individual season from any player I think I've ever seen at Arsenal. Just fantastic. The following season, of course, would ultimately prove disappointing, finishing runners-up in the league to Chelsea, although we did win the FA Cup. Thierry Henry unfortunately missed that final because he was injured, and maybe that seemed to affect the team in the running as well to that season. I mean, Chelsea obviously were they set the record for points that particular season, but Thierry Henry didn't have his greatest season. He did score 30 goals, but he missed quite a few games due to injury. Although I say he did win another Golden Boot actually as well that season. Then we moved on to the 2005-2006 season, the final season at Highbury. Of course, I'm wearing the shirt from that season here. Again, he was quite magnificent that season as well, wasn't he? We went all the way to the final of the Champions League, if you remember. Unfortunately, again, another final he maybe didn't produce. He didn't score the goals, did he? He could have had the chances. We were 1-0 up to kill the game off. But of course, who can forget that brilliant goal he scored away at Real Madrid in that competition, and the goal against Juventus as well at Highbury when we won 2-0. I think that was in the quarter-final. So he certainly played his part in getting us there. And if you remember as well, at the end of that season, he scored 33 goals, won his 4th Golden Boot actually that season. And there was talk then of him leaving at that particular time, and everybody was sort of hoping and praying. I can remember actually hearing the news come through that he had signed a contract extension as we moved into the Emirates Stadium, and everybody was obviously delighted. I mean, I can remember the relief I felt actually. Of course, before we moved to the Emirates, there was a final game at Highbury, of course, against Wigan. No one else could really finish that game in the way he did. You know, scored a hat-trick, scored the final goal at Highbury, again a penalty to complete his hat-trick. I think he scored over 100 goals at Highbury in his career at Arsenal. Absolutely fantastic. And then of course we moved into the Emirates. It turned out to be his final season in the end. Although he signed the contract extension, he had a lot of injuries that season. From the second half of the season onwards, he barely played. So he only scored 17 goals that season. But of course, it was during that season when he broke the goal scoring record, club goal scoring record, overtook Ian Wright. And when he left, actually, in the summer of 2007, he'd increased that record to 226 goals in what was at that time 369 appearances for the club. And he went as probably the greatest player in the Premier League era in English football. And certainly, you know, he's up there, isn't he, as one of the greatest players that Arsenal's ever had in their history, probably alongside Dennis Bergkamp. I think Thierry Henry probably would get more people saying he was better just because of how dynamic he was, the sheer number of goals that he scored. It's hard for me to see much beyond Dennis Bergkamp, I suppose, but I mean, Thierry Henry is as good as anybody, isn't he? He went to Barcelona, 3 seasons there. He won 2 league titles. He won the Copa del Rey, and of course the Champions League as well, which I think he'd really wanted to win. Basically completed his set of medals. Because bearing in mind, of course, for France, he also won the Euros in 2000. So he won the World Cup, won the Euros. He also won a Confederations Cup with France as well. So he basically completed a full set of medals. I mean, fantastic career. At Barcelona, he played 121 games, scored 49 goals for them. His goals maybe dropped off a little bit in his older years, I suppose. He then went to America, of course, to New York Red Bulls. He played there for 4 years between 2010 and 2014, and he made 135 appearances for them and scored 52 goals. He did, of course, briefly, if you remember, return to Arsenal in 2012 on loan, didn't he? He played 7 games during that loan, scored 2 goals. Of course, the goal against Leeds in the FA Cup on his return was one of the most emotional moments as an Arsenal fan I can remember. And there was another one as well, wasn't there? The last minute winner up at Sunderland, which turns out to be his final goal for the club. So he increased the record to 228, which seems unlikely to be beaten, although maybe if Aubameyang signs his new deal and stays until the end of it, he might have a chance of beating it, but I don't know, it's a big total, isn't it? A big total. And of course he retired in 2014. He's been in management a little bit. He was assistant at Belgium, wasn't he, to Martinez between 2016 and 2018. He did go back to Monaco as their head coach briefly in 2018, 2019. Didn't have a particularly good record there. They were struggling at the time. In 20 games there as head coach, they won 4, drew 5 and lost 11, so that wasn't very successful. He's currently back in the MLS at Montreal Impact. He's been there since November. He's only had 6 games in charge, only 1 win, 3 draws and 2 defeats, so it remains to be seen how successful he's going to be as a coach. Of course, there's been talk of him coming back to Arsenal in some coaching capacity later on down the line, maybe working with Arteta. I mean, that would be great, wouldn't it? It'd be lovely to get him back at the club, wouldn't it? Because I'm sure he's still got a lot to offer as on the coaching staff. You know, maybe not as a head coach. That doesn't seem to have worked out well for him. Although I suppose, you know, the clubs he's been at have had a few problems. Of course, away from football, he's, of course, if you remember the famous Renault Clio ad, the Va Va Voom, that he appeared in, of course, for quite a number of years. In fact, he's still on the Renault adverts, isn't he, on Sky quite often. He did also briefly, which I wasn't aware of this till I actually checked, he briefly appeared in a film called Entourage in 2015 as well. Played himself in that film, only a brief role. I didn't actually realise he'd done that as well, so he's certainly had an interesting career, hasn't he? So I just really wanted to, you know, pay tribute to him really on his 43rd birthday. Just, you know, what a magnificent player he was for us. Sometimes, you know, when there's no football on in particular, you sometimes think back to the great days, the great times that he gave us. You know, what an incredible player. I feel privileged to have seen him play for us so many times, so many great memories that he left us. And of course, at the end of the day, it's about trophies, isn't it? And he won 2 Premier League titles and 2 FA Cups with us, and of course was a major part of the best team ever to play football in England, of course the Invincible team from 2004. So just fantastic. So happy birthday to the great man. And I say, let's hope he can return to Arsenal in some capacity at some stage in the future, and give us a few more great memories this time as maybe on the coaching staff instead. So that's this video there. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow it, trying to add some new content in on a regular basis. There's still no new transfer updates for you yet. I'm still waiting for some news to come through. I don't know what the club, why we take so long with these transfers. I don't know. Although we probably don't actually. It's probably more the fact that the speculation builds up, and when in actual fact the deals aren't nowhere near being ready to be completed, are they? It just seems like it's gone on for ages, probably. But anyway, let's hopefully there's some good news to come at some point later on this week. So yeah, I mean, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, I say please subscribe, because it's important to help me grow the channel. And I'm going to try to, say, give you a few new content coming on a regular basis. I've got some exciting things in the pipeline as well for the next few weeks ahead of the new season. And then of course once the football's back, I'll then look at doing a lot of stuff to do with the matches, previews and reviews of the games, match reports, player ratings, and all kinds of other stuff. New things being thrown in all the time. Plus as well, I'll do some more player profiles as well as we go along. So that's all coming up in the future. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video. And of course, as always, come on you Gunners.